What's up, legends, and welcome back to another Unmatched Adventures Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles First Impressions video. In these types of videos, I'm going to give you my initial thoughts, reactions, and insights onto a newly released character after only just a handful of games. So, I might be wrong, I might not be, who knows? This is just my initial reaction to a new character. Please let me know what you think in the comments. And as always, be nice to me, you know? Part of the joy of this format is looking back and seeing how horribly wrong I am on certain characters just based on the initial vibes. But, you know, that just goes to show that we as a community should not be too harsh or jump on the bandwagon too hard for a newly released character. Today we're talking about Raphael, the Red Ninja Turtle. Raph is a melee. I can't keep my own incorrect pronunciation wrong. Raph is a melee fighter with 17 health, move value of 2. He has a sidekick, Casey Jones, the guy with the hockey mask, who is ranged and has 8 health. Raph has anger issues on each of your turns. The first time you lose combat, gain 1 action. So this is kind of like encouraging you to hit small at first, and that way, if your opponent blocks it big, you gain an action and then maybe hit them again, and then kind of Bloody Mary style, hit them on your third action and just wallop them with something big. Who knows? The idea behind this character is that you can apply great amounts of pressure, because if your opponent blocks and wins the combat, you gain an action and get to possibly attack them again. And so if you are constantly attacking your opponent 2 to 3 times on each of your turns, how are they ever going to withstand your aggression? Let's take a look at some of his cards. The first 2 are in every turtle deck. We have Turtle Power and Heroes in a Half Shell, which I probably said those in the wrong order, but Heroes in a Half Shell being a 5 value defense only for Raphael, since Casey is shellless, and Turtle Power being a 3 value attack only, because Casey isn't a turtle, you can't use it. During combat you can boost this attack, so we will keep the boost values of all the other cards in this deck in mind for this context. I love the art for this character. It is very reminiscent of Cobble and Fog, where each character's like signature color was the only thing that really showed through, and then everything else was like grayscale. But the red really pops. Same with the green a little bit against like the black and white and gray background. And just this style of art is probably my favorite of the set. Although looking at those like shurikens embedded in the shell kind of makes me cringe, so we're not gonna look at that too far. But 5 value blocks, super solid. Raph is not amazing in the block department, so I think he might need these more than the average turtle. And Turtle Power is especially good when you are potentially pressuring your opponent into making suboptimal blocks. This is a great finishing move, potentially, depending on what other boost values you have in your hand. Raphael's signature attacks, we have Unbridled Rage, brother. The Macho Man just came out for that one, I guess. It's a 3 value Raph only attack, boost value of 4, so already Turtle Power looking like a sweet 7. You only have 2 copies, but it says during combat, discard any number of defense or versatile cards. Add +2 to this card's value for each card discarded this way. So kind of like a Forever Hide effect type card. Forever Siri, Channel the Source, I think that one is what that one's called. You don't have a ton of defense and or versatile cards that you'd be willing to throw away, but if this attack is landing undefended and or suboptimally blocked, because maybe you use something like a Let's Do This on your first action to bait out their good block. You never know what kind of damage you can hit with this card. I think it's good to keep one of these in your pocket if you have an opening, but I think most of the time this will probably get used as a boost into turtle power. But if you have a large hand size, your opponent has to respect this card, which makes their blocking choices slightly difficult, especially if they know that they're going to get attacked multiple times in the same one of your turns. Let's Do This is a 1 value Raphael attack. Got 3 copies of it. It says after combat, draw 1 card. If you won the combat, draw 2 instead. So this is your regroup substitute, and I love this card. I mean, look at that art. It's so badass. He's like on a motorcycle. He's dragging his sai. He's like getting ready to fight. Look at those forearms. Oof. I love Raphael. Anyways, this is a great like first action attack. You throw something into them. If they block, you'll lose, so you'll gain an action. You'll draw a card and replace itself. There is an interesting mind game with this card where if your opponent knows that you're going to throw something small out on your first action or first attack on the turn, they might just like take it because they don't want you to gain the action immediately. And if they take this, you're really happy. This character loves any and all card draw as a way to keep his hand not empty and maintain pressure. So yeah, I think both of these are super solid cards, and when your opponent knows what they are, you can establish some decent mind games with the way that you order your attacks and the way that you order your big and or small attacks. We've got more Raphael cards, and Raph loves attacking, so they might look versatile. They're really red in our hearts. We will start off with Sai, which is a 4 value versatile with no text. This is now a common card. Electra had the original size, and it really makes sense that this is now a common card because Raph has size, Electra has size. It makes sense that they're the same card. This will most often be used as a solid value block, but you never know if maybe second or third action you slip one of these in and land some big damage. Next we have Break Something, which says immediately cancel all during combat and after combat effects on your opponent's card. After combat, if no effects were canceled this way, deal 2 damage to an adjacent opposing fighter. So this is kind of like your feint substitute for this deck. It is not great actually played into other feints because your immediately will not cancel their immediately, and then their immediately will cancel your after combat effect. So no damage is done, but I guess there are worse interactions to have. What amazing art. Holy cow. This is really good at preventing the during combat value increases on your opponent's attack cards. Put the S in the wrong spot. English is hard. It says the person born in America who's been speaking English his whole life. Ugh, sacre bleu. And after combat effects usually are pretty juicy in terms of like movement and or healing and or card draw. So just disrupting your opponent's plans in those regards can be really good. In worst case scenario, you don't cancel anything. Maybe they played an attack without text or something like that. And you get to deal 2 damage to an adjacent opposing fighter, which is solid. This is a great kind of like, if your opponent is attacking you with their last action, you can play this and it'll kind of like cancel out any of their movement effects, so that way they start your turn adjacent to you, so you can just wallop them and maybe do a couple attacks. And the damage, always decent. Although it's kind of tricky because you can't necessarily always rely on this card giving you damage when you're like calculating lethal. So depending on your opponent's deck and what kind of blank cards they have, or cards with immediately effects. You can factor that into your plans. We got a Raphael scheme. Raphael is cool, but rude. You have 2 copies of this. It says deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter adjacent to at least one friendly fighter, which, under the context of Unmatched Adventures, makes this a much more powerful card. But if you move Raph and you move Casey and you get into the weeds of your opponent's characters, kind of like a nice AoE damage effect. But because it says each opposing fighter adjacent to at least one friendly fighter, if Raph and Casey are adjacent to the same opposing fighter, it will still only deal 1 damage. The card draw is great. The little cantrip, it replaces itself effect, is nice because, like I said, this character wants to keep a decent amount of cards in their hand, so that way they can attack 2 to 3 times a turn when the opportunity presents itself. You're not always going to have those turns, but when they present the opportunity to arrive, you want to be prepared. So any type of card that replaces itself like this one, or nets you a card like a card we'll see coming up pretty soon, are very, very good in the context of anger issues, your ability. We got some Casey cards. We have a 3-value Casey attack. It says batter up. After combat, if you won the combat, move the opposing fighter up to 3 spaces. So your ability anger issues will trigger off of Casey and or Raphael. So it's interesting that you have a if you won the combat ability, which is kind of nice. You're hedging your bets, I guess, because if you win the combat with batter up, you get something. And if you lose the combat, if it's the first time you lost a combat this turn, you also get something. Keep in mind that Casey is ranged, so you can use this from afar to maybe move your enemies into ideal scenarios for you, unideal for them. 3 spaces is definitely not negligible, although a 3-value attack isn't necessarily always the most reliable thing in the world to win a combat. However, I think with the other card that Casey has, if your opponent sees you attacking them from range, they're probably not going to throw their biggest block in the world out, because Casey has Slapshot, a 2-value versatile card. It says during combat, if Casey is adjacent to the opposing fighter, this card's value is 6 instead. So kind of like a, not right hand man, because that's if Xander is adjacent to Buffy. Daughter of the Dragon, that's what it is, where Misty Knight is ranged, but has this card that is huge block, huge attack if the opponent is adjacent to them. And it makes Casey very annoying to kill if you keep at least one of these in your hand. But it also means you can go on the offensive and move Casey up and close and personal and just wallop them with a 6. How telegraphed that is going to be and how ready your opponent is going to be to value block like that is up for debate. But I think this is basically as solid a offensive package as you could ask for a sidekick, with decent defensive options as well. We got some Ennies. Crowd Control, which is probably one of, if not my favorite card from this deck. It is a 2-value attack only Ennie that says after combat, draw 1 card for each adjacent opposing fighter. Deal 1 damage to each of those fighters. So this does 3 things really, really well. 1, it's a low value attack that will probably gain you an action if you lose the combat with it. Number 2, it draws cards. So if you move yourself and ideally you get adjacent to at least 2 opposing fighters, but if you get any more, this card is just crazy, crazy good. So it draws cards and it deals damage. So even though you're not winning the combat, you're still dealing some sort of damage and moving closer to ending the game. I really, really, really like this card. If you see any opportunity that your opponent mispositions and doesn't play around this card, you need to punish them by drawing multiple cards. Just chef's kiss. Relentless is a 3-value versatile any. It says after combat, shuffle this card into your deck, then draw 1 card. This card replaces itself, which is fantastic for maintaining your hand size. God, Raphael, you're just so tough. And I guess it has some exhaustion implications, but as a character that wants to draw cards and is gaining extra actions, I don't really think you care about exhaustion. You don't really have like passes or anything like that, so yeah, just play aggressive as Raphael. Don't necessarily try to go for like a relentless loop, which I guess you could do, because if your deck was empty and you blocked with this would go into your deck and then you just draw it again. Good thing to note that Casey can block with this. This is like probably one of the best blocks you have in your deck. I pretty much block with this whenever I can. Payback time! Exclamation point is a 2-value versatile any. It says during combat, if you lost to combat this turn, this card's value is 5 instead. So this is a really good finishing move, I would say. If you attack with like a crowd control or a let's do this, lose a combat, gain an action, and then this is now like a 5. Not really good into cancels because of the 2 value, but it also has a possible really good defensive application where if your opponent attacks you big and you play like Relentless and take like 1 or 2 damage from their 4 or 5 value attack, you lose the combat. They want to attack you again, you can play Payback Time and it'll trigger as a defensive 5, which seems pretty good. I don't know if you would necessarily want to take the 5 away from your offense to block with it, but you know, having that option where if your opponent double attacks you, you can kind of punish them with a surprise value block out of nowhere is decent. So anyway, hopefully the vibe of this character has shown through, where you essentially, you want to get down and dirty, you want to be up in your opponent's face, just constantly harassing them, poking them with tiny attacks, and being able to attack them more because you are losing a combat at some point during your turn. I think Raph is a little fragile because he does have turtle power, he does have Psy, but then between like Relentless, Break Something, Payback Time, those aren't always the best and or consistent blocks you have. So I think you are a lot better when you are the aggressor. If you ever get put on the back foot, I think might be in a little bit of trouble, but you definitely do have some kind of like, not catch-up mechanics, but the fact that you can pretty reliably gain a third action means that you can sometimes get like a free maneuver in on your turn, especially if you throw kind of like a weenie attack like crowd control or let's do this, which it's also amazing that both of those cards potentially draw you cards, which is really good. And I think you hit hard enough with a potential like 6 or 7 value turtle power or a Casey Jones Daughter of the Dragon. I already forgot what that card was called. Oh no, Slapshot. But I think you hit hard enough that you just need to find like the draw cards and not run out of cards, and then you're in a really good spot. This character definitely is more up my alley than some of the other turtles, and I have had a lot of fun just throwing out mind games and being a pest with Raphael. So let me know what you think of this character. This one is already near and dear to my heart after only a few games. Yeah. My little angry boy. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for the rest of this afternoon if you are watching this on Friday, October 17th, when these videos will go live. We got more turtles. We got villains. And we got a boxer. Woohoo! Thank you so much for watching. And as always, like, subscribe, and yay!